John Gilligan cited for contempt of court at his extradition hearing in London. The Taoiseach orders a legal review after decision not to prosecute in blood scandal. A Cork man is jailed for life for the murder of his 6-month-old daughter. A nun has been in court in Dublin, charged under the Forgeries Act. Good evening and welcome. John Gilligan, who's wanted here on a charge of murdering Veronica Guerin, has been cited for contempt of court in London. 45-year-old Gilligan, who's from Blanchardstown in Dublin, was brought before Belmarsh Magistrates Court to face resumed extradition proceedings. He spent part of the morning reading a book and refused to stand up at the end of the hearings. The proceedings were adjourned until next Tuesday.
The series of events at today's extradition hearing at Belmarsh Magistrates Court varied from complex legal arguments from the barristers to comical and at times contemptuous behaviour on the part of the defendant. John Gilligan is wanted back in Ireland to face a total of 18 charges in connection with firearms and drug trafficking offences and the murder of Veronica Guerin. Senior Garda officers were in court today and 2 were asked to identify Gilligan. Detective Inspector Jerry O'Connell said he knew Gilligan in the 70s and 80s, but admitted he did not know he was a seaman for 15 years and couldn't tell the court where he lived between 74 and 78. But Sergeant Martin O'Neill of the Garda's extradition section, seen here on the left, said he knew John Gilligan very well. He said he met him 20 or 30 times when he was a guard in Blanchardstown between 1983 and 87. He said he stopped him, spoke to him, went to his house and knew his wife and son. But Gilligan's defence counsel still did not formally concede. The person in the dock was the person named in the warrants, John Gilligan. An experienced criminal lawyer, Tom O'Connell, came over from Dublin and gave detailed evidence as to the legitimacy of the warrants and the establishment and jurisdiction of the Special Criminal Court. He explained to the court in painstaking detail why the offences of murder, drug trafficking and possession of guns and ammunition in Irish law correspond to similar offences in British law. But sitting in the dock, Gilligan had to be asked at one stage by the magistrate to stop reading a book. Another time he stretched back and smiled to himself, twirling his glasses around in his right hand. The real drama in this case came at the end of today's proceedings when John Gilligan refused to stand in court when asked by the magistrate. After consultations, his counsel, James Lewis, said he wasn't sure if Gilligan was refusing to recognise the court. The magistrate then said, "I consider this contempt of court. I'll deal with it at the end of these proceedings." John Gilligan was remanded back in custody. His case resumes again next Tuesday.
The Mays escaper Anthony Kelly has been remanded in custody to the Dublin District Court on foot of an extradition warrant from Northern Ireland. Kelly, who was convicted of the murder of an RUC officer in 1980, was arrested this morning in Letterkenny in County Donegal.
Anthony Kelly was one of 38 prisoners who attempted to escape from the Mays on a Sunday afternoon in September 1983. They broke out from H Block 7 and hijacked a meal van in an operation in which a prison officer, James Ferrin, died of a heart attack. In 1988, he was sentenced by the Special Criminal Court to 7 years in prison on charges of possession of weapons and explosives. On his release in 1993, he moved to Letterkenny. Today, the Dublin District Court heard during a sitting at the Special Criminal Court that the 36-year-old prisoner was arrested shortly after 7 o'clock at Glenard Park on foot of a warrant. Garda Detective Inspector John McGinley said Kelly made no comment when cautioned and on being brought to the Garda station was allowed to call his family and legal counsel. RUC Detective Inspector Ian Hutchin told the court that he'd investigated the murder of Reserve Police Constable David Stanley Rees in Derry in May 1979 and followed the case through to Kelly's conviction in 1980. The Assistant Governor of the Mays Prison, John Brian Barlow, identified Anthony Kelly in court. He was wearing a green top and jeans. Counsel for Kelly, Mary Ellen Ring, said her client was unemployed and while legal aid didn't apply, she would seek the necessary recommendation from the Attorney General. Judge Murrow Conlon said he was satisfied both with the identity of the prisoner and with the warrant. He remanded Anthony Kelly in custody until a hearing next Wednesday. There were minor scuffles outside Green Street Court when Kelly was taken away. Sinn Féin's Vice President Pat Doherty has described the arrest as an absolute disgrace and scandal.
Minister of State at the Department of Foreign Affairs, Liz O'Donnell,